So one of the first questions you may have is, where should I build my shelter? That question kind of varies on location. I'm located in northeastern US, but the type of shelter that I'm going to be demonstrating is relatively universal and can be built in most different parts of the US. So when you are in a emergency shelter building situation, regardless of how you got into it, you're not going to have that much time to hike around and find the most perfect location. You're going to want to stay where you're at. Just do a 360. Use your senses, right? You're going to stop, you're going to look, you're going to listen, you're going to smell, and you're going to use those senses to help determine the best and the most safest location to put your shelter. When you're looking around, you're going to want to find the most level, flat location possible with the most tree coverage possible. You want to make sure those trees are obviously alive and well, and they're not dead, and they're not going to fall. You don't want to build a shelter directly next to a stream. After a heavy rain, the water will rise and your shelter will get washed right out. And you don't want to build directly on a hillside or mountain, because after a heavy rainfall, you'll have erosion, you have the risk of rocks falling and rolling down the side, and your shelter is just not going to last. And you don't want to build a shelter out in an open field or meadow because you're not going to have any tree coverage to help protect you from wind. We're not tying our beams together with paracord or line of some sort, right? We're just using what we have here in nature. So we're trying to build one fast and build one quick. And to do that, we're just going to have to be able to throw it together and utilize what we have. So the type of shelter that we're going to be putting together today is a type of A-frame shelter build. There's multiple ways to build A-frames, but the one that we're going to be doing today is a lean-to A-frame build. The lean-to A-frame shelter build consists of one main support beam and multiple side support beams. Okay? When you're looking around for material to build this type of shelter, you want to make sure your material isn't rotten or just won't fall apart in the process of building the shelter. Okay? So together, we're going to go around and look for this material. I will show you what you shouldn't use and what you should use or what you could use. And we're going to put this thing together and we're going to survive. So just after a little bit of looking, I was able to find the perfect support beam for our shelter. It's a freshly fallen branch. It's fat enough and it's strong enough. And like I said, we're trying to build a shelter quickly. So we're going to make do with what we have here. So I'll go ahead and take this back to our spot and proceed in building the shelter. What do you guys think? I think that looks pretty good. So just a little recap on what we have here. I was able to find this branch that has a nice little fork in it, and I had to break off about 2 foot of the other end of the branch. It's a little too long. So in the predicament where you don't have as nice of a branch as I do, and you don't happen to have a fork in it where you could snugly lean it up against a tree, I was able to notice that a branch naturally fell on a tree like this, which gives a good example. If you take a look at this branch that fell right here, it has fallen but leaned up against that branch right there. So in this predicament where you have a nice beam, you can lean it up against the branch off of a tree. Or if you had a tree that grown into a Y, lean it up in between those. Kind of like what we have right there. Right there. All right? Except taller, of course. Trees go off in different directions. There's so many different ways you could lean a stick against a tree. You have to make do with what you have, guys, right? So we're making do with what we have, and I found a really nice branch, and I'm leaning it up against a really nice tree. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that I have the outside of my shelter pretty much completed. I am going to fill the gaps in with some little twigs like this. Those kinds of things will help fill in those gaps as like webbing, which I will be able to throw leaves on top of and they won't fall through. So I'm gonna put a bunch of webbing in between all of here with small twigs to catch leaves, and I'll continue to pile leaves on top of leaves to make good insulation. So I'm starting to waterproof my shelter right now. I'm gathering leaves, I'm throwing leaves over top, but there are a lot of things that you can use to help cover the structure of your shelter. Okay. For example, I was able to find this nice piece of bark. I'm actually going to use this as a door. So I don't have to weave and construct a door. I can use a large piece of bark to help cover the entrance to my shelter. But other than leaves and grass, you can also use moss. This is a great insulator and great padding for you to sleep on. If you have enough of this lying around and you can peel it off of a rock and make a whole floor mat in your shelter of moss, you're going to be pretty good. So I'm gonna get back to it, continue to cover my shelter with leaves, and yeah, we'll proceed from there. So I have my shelter pretty much complete. If you remember, I had my main beam, I put multiple side beams down, and then I filled those gaps with smaller twigs and branches. It's winter right now, so we don't have a bunch of leaves on the trees. I'm using a bunch of dead leaves. So in any other time of the year, you're going to be using green leaves and green branches and twigs. Make excellent insulators and waterproofing. But once you get your shelter covered in leaves, you're going to take a look inside and you're going to see some light. Those are areas that are compromised, and you're going to need to fill those gaps with more leaves, moss, or bark. Okay, you can never have too many leaves. I don't even have too many leaves. I'm going to need to continuously put more and more leaves on there, and over time they're going to compress and it's going to be fantastic. So I finished my shelter. My walls are completely sealed up, and my floor is covered in plenty of insulation. I threw a bunch of leaves in here, so it's well padded, and I'm very, very comfortable. I'm already feeling warm. I've only been in here for a couple seconds, and it's already feeling pretty nice. I'm out of the wind and actually out of the cold. So all I have left to do is throw my bark door on, and I feel like I'd do pretty good for the night. So before I go, I'd like to give you guys a little bit of dad advice. Everyone deserves a fair chance, but Mother Nature is not fair. So get out there, train, do everything you can to further your knowledge on wilderness survival. Because it's better to have that knowledge and not need it than need it and not have it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Be safe.